conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. Sarah Sharif's father and stepmother have been jailed for life for the sadistic murder of their 10-year-old girl. The judge said she had suffered treatment that amounted to torture. Ukraine has claimed responsibility for an attack which has killed a senior Russian general in Moscow using an exploding scooter. And Keir Starmer has said women affected by changes to the state pension age, the so-called WASPy women, won't get compensation. The decision has caused anger within his own party. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with Conservative Home's Deputy Editor, Henry Hill, and The Observer's Chief Leader Writer, Sonia Soda. Welcome and great to see both of you. So let's take a look at the front pages then, starting with the Metro and the jailing of the father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif over her murder and the abuse that led up to is the top story for the paper, which quotes the judge's tribute to Sarah, brave and spirited to the end. The Financial Times leads with the killing of a senior Russian general in an explosion involving an e-scooter, reportedly an assassination by Ukraine security services. That story is also the lead for tomorrow's Guardian. The government decision not to compensate women born in the 1950s who lost pension money after changes to their retirement age is lead story in the Mirror. The headline, "We have been betrayed." That word betrayal also featuring on the front of the Daily Express. Same too for the Mail, which says the move proves that Labour cynically said anything to get elected to power. The Times says the Prime Minister is now facing a rebellion by his own backbenchers over the U-turn. The Eye, though, says the government has agreed to compensate the victims of a second post office computer scandal. It is understood billionaire businessman Elon Musk may be prepared to give Reform UK as much as £78 million. Musk Reform's leader, Nigel Farage, and party treasurer Nick Candy are all pictured on the front of the Daily Telegraph. And he may be no oil painting to look at, or is he? The Star features a dog which apparently resembles a Picasso masterpiece. It's true.
I think it's poor Casso.
Poor Casso. Ching. Don't forget, scan the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme. Check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Henry and Sonia. Welcome to both of you. Starting with the Metro, Sonia, brave and spirited to the end. There was something truly horrifying listening to the judge in the case of Sarah Sharif today outlined the abuse she had suffered, not just in the weeks before she died and the days before, but in the years that led up to her death.
Absolutely, and I still remember reading about this case when details first emerged, and it just sends a chill through you to read, about what this child, Sarah, suffered. I think it raises huge questions. The judge was very, very clear that this is he's a very, very experienced trial judge. This is one of the worst cases he's ever presided across. He said, of course, that the primary responsibility lies with Sarah's father, stepmother and her uncle, who've all been convicted of various crimes, including her father for her murder. But there were huge, huge questions about social services and the systems that were meant to keep Sarah safe. Sarah was known to social services, she was known to the police, she was known to the family courts as a child at risk of harm. Her father was known as an individual who abused vulnerable women. What was she doing in his care? There are questions about homeschooling and safety regulations for children who are being homeschooled. I've written countless columns about this, something that people who care about children's welfare have been trying to urge the government to act on, because if you're a parent who wants to abuse your child, all you have to say is that you're homeschooling them and it becomes much more difficult to detect. But there are also really serious questions for the family courts. It was known that Sarah's father was an abuser. What was she doing in his care? And we hear all the time, I mean, cases that are terrible, not as terrible as this, but children who are harmed by men who are their fathers, who we know are abusive, but where the family courts either order contact or put the children in their custody. And so I think, there are journalists, including a colleague of mine, Louise Tickle, and Hannah Summers, another colleague, who are trying to uncover and report on what's been going on in the family courts. And actually, the judiciary have not allowed it to be known which judges presided over these cases. But I think there's a very strong public interest case in understanding exactly how these decisions were made and who made them so that we can avoid this happening in the future.
Yes, and the use of the word terrible, which you did, an utter understatement of what we heard.
Absolutely.
You know, her buttocks burnt by an iron, burn marks to her ankles that had been tied, looks like boiling water had been poured on them. You know, bones in her neck broken after multiple efforts of manual strangulation. It is utterly disgusting what happened to this young child. And as you've pointed out, it was not necessary for her to be in that home. You know, so many questions. We're expecting a review. We've got a bill going through Parliament, which we know the Children's Commissioner wants to change to make questions about homeschooling more relevant to people and to put education at the forefront of part of the safeguarding of young children.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a balancing act for the government, of course, because people do have a right to homeschool, and the vast majority of homeschooling parents do a perfectly good job. It should be clear. But as you say, there is a danger there, because if a child is going into school every day, then they have peers, they're seen by other adults, they do PE. If they're sustaining physical abuse, people will notice, right? And if they suddenly go absent from school, that is ideally something that gets picked up, and people who are serial truants will often be visited at home. And I think that you do need to replicate that in some way so that children who are being educated at home, there is still that external monitoring, because we have responsibility for their welfare. I think the other really important change is every time something like this happens, the way that the reform always goes is that the organisations just fall back on like lessons learned, right? They're like, we're going to take these learnings forward, and they do a review. And I think that actually, if you really want to drive change, an individual needs to be responsible for anything that one of these organisations does, right? There should be a caseworker assigned to, for example, Sarah's case, and they need to be individually responsible. Even
if they're overworked and they deal with 40 or 50 cases and they prioritise those cases.
I'm not saying that they should be, shipped off to Australia. We can work on what the system of punishments is, but somebody needs to be individually responsible, because otherwise nobody is.
But I'm suggesting maybe it's the system that is at fault for overworking social workers and caseloads being
They're
too
not
high.
mutually exclusive. The system can be overstretched. That's definitely something that needs to be reviewed. But if blame can be continually shunted back into the organisation in the abstract, then you never have the incentive for fundamental reform.
But it's also the family courts and judges who ultimately make the decisions about where children live. And the abuse of Sarah's father of vulnerable women was known about, and every day children are...
Well, you say it was known about, but was it known to that family court judge at that time?
It was known
that's the question.
It was known to the family courts, to the court system in general. I mean, I don't think we know the ins and outs yet of the exact detail, but that is a massive, massive problem in the system. And we do know that family court judges, and they have an unenviable task, these judges. Sometimes they have to decide where children live based on, information that comes before them, and they have to make decisions. They have to find facts about what happened. It's a difficult job, but every day family court judges are ordering children to live with or have contact with abusive men. That's dangerous, and it needs to stop.
Yes, and, Henry, you're right about homeschooling not being a black and white issue. Sometimes parents take their children out of school. If they have special educational needs, for example, they feel they're not being met, they've taken them out to look after them better. So there we are. Let's move on to the Daily Express, shall we? Which is about the so-called WASPy women, those born in the 1950s who saw a massive hike in the age at which they take their state pension, and who claim, some of them, that they were not told in time. What is the decision from Labour about whether they compensate them or not?
So Labour has decided not to compensate them on the, I think, reasonable ground that these women were given 15 years' notice, and that there was a full press campaign and government awareness campaign 15 years in advance, and that there's only so long, what could the government possibly have done, right? If you're, for whatever reason, not opening the official envelope that comes through because it looks like junk mail, if you're missing the press campaigns and everything else, there's limits to how much the government can reasonably do to inform you about something.
So you're not sympathetic then?
No, not at all. Not at all. They're one of the least deserving campaigns in British politics.
Why could it not have been stepped, though? Why jump 5 years? That's what seemed to be the unfairness of it, really.
Because they wouldn't have done it fast enough, right? The problem is, as I sort of bore on about whenever anyone gives me the opportunity, this country has an ageing population, and currently a huge amount of state spending is channeled towards the older citizens, triple lock most obviously, who are this country's wealthiest age cohort by both weekly income and asset wealth. At the same time, we have...
justifying the winter fuel payment change.
I did. Labour, yeah, absolutely. And the challenge is, this would have cost £10 billion. It would have cost £10 billion at a time when we're struggling to keep the NHS going, when local councils are starting to go bankrupt, which means social care is going to get moved onto Whitehall's books at some point, when there's a courts backlog, which means that criminal cases are being booked in 2030s, 2035. So the basic functions of the state need funding more than giving £10 billion to relatively well-off
people. The word
people.
betrayed there in the Express. Daily Mail, betrayal. Case for the defence, Malud.
Yes, I will do a case for the defence. I think it's really important to say that some of these women launched a court case to try and challenge the lawfulness of the actual government decision. That was not successful. The government was allowed to do this. I do think it's obviously harsh when you create a step change like this. And for some women, the cut-off will have been very, very steep, and there's huge pension inequality between men and women. I think we should recognise that. Lots of women of that age group don't have the same private pension entitlement that men do. So, but that is not what this compensation is about. What this compensation is about is the fact that independent bodies, including the Parliamentary Ombudsman, looked at whether these women were properly informed, and it said no. There was even research in the 2000s that showed that these women that many of these women did not know about it, and still the government did not take action. It's governments over time. There needed to be a proper public information campaign about this. There wasn't. The government was remiss, and that is why an independent parliamentary ombudsman has suggested that it would be fair to pay out compensation, not because of the change itself, but because there were serious government failings in communication. And I think, some of the women are saying, well, if you've got an ombudsman that makes these rulings and the government just ignores them, what's the point? No one's saying this is a post office scandal, but it is an injustice by the state. It was found to be so by the Parliamentary Ombudsman around the maladministration, the maladministration, they called it. And, quite frankly, if an ombudsman orders the government to pay, they should pay up.
So what about this specific accusation, betrayal that proves Labour cynically said anything to get elected, because there are posters with Liz Kendall and Rachel Reeves saying they're going to support and give a fair... a fair solution for all women affected. Is that embarrassing for those two?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's a point of agreement.
We agree. I mean, I personally would fine MPs for any time they appeared in one of these campaign prop photo shoots, because there's hundreds of them.
And it's embarrassing for Starmer too. It's not just Reeves and Liz Kendall. Keir Starmer signed a pledge in 2021.
This is the kind of stuff that's really easy to say in opposition. Right, and both parties do it. The Conservatives, now they're back in opposition, they'll start saying stuff they don't mean.
Of Corbyn before the 2019 election, which was going to cost, what was it, £56 billion
that was too far in the other
Did they not
direction.
learn the lesson from that?
That was too far in the other direction. That was basically looking to sort of undo the government's changes rather than compensate women for this maladministration.
But it is causing Labour problems, because there's talk about a rebellion on their backbenches. Fundamentally, the challenge that Labour has is that it's got all these new MPs elected, many of them with relatively narrow majorities, because it has a big majority in Parliament, but the seat majorities are quite narrow.
Yeah.
And then they've had to maintain the 2-child limit, they've had to means test the winter fuel payment, and all of these things are just adding up. There's lots of them having to make lots of decisions that are angering their voters.
So you're suggesting they're losing the left of the party. They must be rage, must be fury at Labour.
But also, I think the public just really don't like politicians who make clear pledges that are easily understood and who go back on them. Just look at the Lib Dems with tuition fees. And, obviously these pledges were being made back in 2021, 2022. So it was still quite far out from an election campaign. There was huge discipline on the Labour ranks in the sort of, year, 18 months in the run-up to the election. But I do think that this politically might haunt Labour, really, because it's really bad to be caught as politicians. Pictures, we've signed pledges, and then actually when you're in government you say, sorry, we can't do it.
Yeah, Times as well. Let's just see what they're going with on this story. Labour MPs rebel over new blow to pensioners. Exactly as you're saying. There's a bit of loggerheads even within the Labour Party. How many months are we in now? 6, is it?
Just coming up to 6 months, yeah.
6 months, there we are. It's not, I mean, it's not long, is it?
Time flies when you're having fun.
Coming up next here on Sky News, Ukraine security services have taken responsibility for the assassination of a senior Russian general in extraordinary circumstances. Back in just a moment.
There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. You know, it takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, like, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel like just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it, let me see it. This is brilliant, brilliant.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
For detectives, the first 48 hours after a murder are crucial in the search for clues. The public expects them to find Jill Dando's killer soon.
I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it.
Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders.
My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martin Brunt, Sky News, at the Old Bailey.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. With me once again, Henry Hill and Sonia Soda, still debating WASPy women, I have to say, all the way through.
All the way through the break.
I'm quite pleased to move on to the photo du jour, I have to say, front page of the Daily Telegraph, which includes Donald Trump in either cricket or tennis gear, I'm not quite sure, at Mar-a-Lago.
Very young Donald Trump, I think.
With the Reform head team, one might say. There we go, look at that. Front page of the Telegraph, Musk ready to bankroll Farage is their headline, Sonia.
So, well, they've clearly met Elon Musk, the world's richest man, and Nigel Farage, the leader of the Reform Party, of course, here in the UK. And there were rumours circulation, talk of a very, very large political donation. Now, obviously, political donations from people who are not British are banned in the UK. but it is perfectly legal for British companies to donate to British or companies that have a base here in the UK to donate to political parties. So the donation, it's thought, would go through X. And there are no limits on the donations that individuals or companies can make as long as they are declared.
OK, so is there a deadline now on the government to change the rules on political donations, or will this be one of the richest parties in the UK?
I don't know if they will. The way that we usually regulate spending in the UK is that we restrict the amount you can spend during an election. So you can't run an American-style, we spend £1 billion or dollars on a campaign, right? There's very strict limits. So if they did receive this donation, then they'd have a massive pot of cash. They could only spend as much as Labour and the Tories during a general election. So the question is, could they use it for other things in the interim? Now, in theory, you could buy yourself a world-class digital operation. You could pay an army of full-time staffers to go and do your organising. In practice, I think the funniest thing to come out of this would just be in 5 years' time when there's investigative reporting on the insane things this got spent on. If you had reform with £78 million in the bank, I think the amount of that would end up being spent on frontline politics is maybe not as high as some people might expect. But there is a question about
first-class rail to Clacton.
There's all kinds of things. Just look at the Democrat campaign in America. All kinds of things you can get away with. I think there is a question about the rules. There is currently an exception in the ban on foreign donations. We have a loophole that allows Sinn Féin to take American money, which we should close. But I think the other issue is, you don't really want to look like you're making the rules in response to one party, right? And I think that's the challenge, especially because that's what Farage lives off, right? Exactly. The idea that there's a double standard, the idea. So if Labour were to go, reform's getting a load of money, we're going to change the rules. I mean, even as somebody who does not wish reform well, I think that would seem fairly egregious.
But there have been long-standing proposals to reform the system for political donations, including the Committee on Standards in Public Life in 2011 said there should be a cap of around sort of £10,000 or £11,000 maximum on donations. And I mean, why not have that? It's a good thing if there's less money in politics. No. It would get, the influence of the... It would even things up on both sides, let's put it like that, and I think that's a much better idea.
British politics would collapse, right? I mean, the fact is there's no public...
I'm sure they'd find a way of carrying on.
Only by defrauding the system, right? Only by taking those big donations and dividing them up. Because ultimately, we do not have public funding for political parties. And Labour is currently in the process of rationalising...
That's a tax on
taxpayers' money.
Well right now.
But also, Labour are currently in the process of putting through a load of local government reforms, which lots of parties have resisted because however sensible they are, most of the people out delivering leaflets for both parties now are people who are councillors, right? You've got parish town councils and so on.
I'm going to move on. Do you mind?
Right, yeah, sure. We need them. We need money in politics.
But I haven't got time for it. Very quickly then, FT, an extraordinary development really. A senior general blown up on an e-scooter by Ukraine's special services.
Absolutely. So this is a very senior Russian general.
Igor Kirillov, I think, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for helping me out there, Anna. But he is a Russian general who's accused by Ukraine of using chemical weapons against Ukrainian troops. And as a result, there are sanctions that have been placed against him from the UK. But it's a huge deal, a very big kind of political assassination that Ukraine will chalk up as a real kind of success.
Yeah. Henry, Sonia, thank you both very much indeed. Plenty more stories we didn't even get to, but luckily you're back at 11, so see you then. Let's take a quick look at the weather, shall we? And mild, if unsettled for the next few days, turning briefly colder on Thursday. A mild, windy and showery start to the day. Southern Scotland, northern England, North Wales will see more general rain. That rain, locally heavy, will ease and fade through the morning to leave a mix of sunshine and showers for the UK and for Ireland. Scotland can expect the most widespread showers, staying mild and windy for most. Coastal gales possible, and the afternoon will bring changes to the south. Rain will clip the south of Ireland while spreading across much of England and Wales, with torrential rain developing in the southwest, so be aware of that. So our press preview continues at 11. Sarah Sharif's mother calls her daughter's killers sadists after they were handed life sentences for murdering the 10-year-old.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before?
Yes. Cheers. We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life?
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.